Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting series. This is What If Transmigrated in Danmachi world with a system. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 71. Acting is a necessary skill for adventurers. Bell, always cautious by nature, had finally let his guard down. Worried about drawing attention, he had never dared investigate the hostess of fertility. Doing so would have been too obvious a move. After all, why investigate something unless you already suspect it's out of the ordinary? In that sense, the act of investigating was practically an admission, and Bell had always avoided such self-defeating behavior. So, aside from training and dungeon runs, he kept to the area around the old church ruins while in Oreo. What he didn't expect was that the very place he worked so hard to avoid would be the one his own goddess Sama dragged him into. Not that he had a choice now. He decided to treat it as a chance to test the waters. Bell masked his brief shock by pretending to be suddenly absorbed in the menu, flinching at the sound of a voice beside him. Goddess Sama, I'm not too familiar with the menu here. Why don't you order? Oh? Sure, I'll handle it. Hestia didn't find it strange at all. She took the menu from Bell and started ordering swiftly. As a regular, she knew exactly what was tasty and affordable. Since they were dining together, she picked dishes sized for two and added 2 servings of fruit wine. Got it. Please wait a moment, Lady Hestia. Oh, thanks, Seer. As a regular here, Hestia naturally knew the silver-haired waitress. Seer Flova, the face of the hostess of fertility, was a well-known server. With her cute looks, youthful charm, petite figure, long silver-gray hair, and matching eyes, plus a smile full of innocent delight, she was easily the tavern's brightest star. But none of that was what made Bell wary. The real reason lay in her hidden identity. Seer wasn't just a poster girl, she was a spy for the goddess of beauty, Freya. She had offered up both her body and name to Freya, earning the right to serve as the goddess's earthly incarnation. In truth, Seer Flova was Freya's human form. She had been placed here deliberately to search for those with radiant souls. The hostess of fertility itself was anything but ordinary. Its manager was a former captain of Freya's Familia, a level 6 adventurer strong enough to destroy a Familia on their own. And the other staff weren't ordinary waitresses either. Aside from the manager, all the female staff were level 4 adventurers. There were 4 of them, enough to rank among the top powerhouses in Oreo. That such a powerful group operated freely inside a tavern was nothing short of unbelievable. If the adventurers enjoying their meals here knew who was serving them, their hair might stand on end. But right now, what was making Bell's scalp tingle the most was the thought, had Freya noticed him? As they waited, Bell didn't sit stiffly. Instead, he kept a careful eye on his surroundings. There's actually a tavern like this in Oreo. Bell remained alert to Freya's reaction, but he couldn't help being intrigued by the tavern's decor. It was clearly well designed, and the dim lighting added an elegant touch to the atmosphere. Surrounded by this ambience, even Bell felt himself relaxing a bit. Still, unlike the typical drunkards, Bell was better at keeping his emotions in check and wouldn't display any excessive behavior. That's right! The Hostess of Fertility is a well-known tavern in Oreo. It doesn't open in the morning, only after the sun sets. Bell nodded in understanding. It operated like most normal bars. Taverns in Oreo catered to the night crowd. With the constant pressure adventurers faced, living life on the edge, never knowing what tomorrow might bring, it made sense that they'd occasionally need to blow off steam with a drink. Oh? You look new, young man. First time in our tavern? Yeah, I just arrived in Oreo, and I'm not really into this kind of scene. Hearing the voice, Bell turned to see who spoke. It was an older woman, tall and impressively muscular. Mia Grand, the tavern's manager, known as the hostess of fertility herself. Rumor had it she was a temporarily retired level 6. Facing the formidable manager, Bell didn't panic. He just looked around, a bit uncomfortable with the environment. He preferred quiet places, so this kind of noisy, lively atmosphere wasn't to his taste. He understood this was what taverns were like, but that didn't mean he had to enjoy it. This is what Oreo is like at night. As an adventurer, you'd better get used to it sooner rather than later, Mia said. One look at Bell's youthful face told her he was a complete rookie, probably hadn't been an adventurer for long. Bell was aware of that himself, but adapting to this kind of atmosphere wasn't going to be easy for him anytime soon. Is Goddess Sama a regular here? Well, sometimes I tag along with Hephaestus for a drink, Hestia said. She didn't want to admit she always had to beg Hephaestus to bring her along for free drinks. So unless Hephaestus happened to be free, Hestia didn't usually get the chance to enjoy a drink here. The prices were steep. It's just too expensive for me. And Hephaestus won't give me that much pocket money. Bell's eyelid twitched as he watched his goddess Sama grumble. He could fully understand Hephaestus Sama's exasperation. Still, it wasn't like Goddess Sama spent all that much. Right now, with just the two of them and their familia, they could easily cover her expenses. Belle also knew that while she could be a bit spoiled in daily life, Hestia was serious and responsible when it came down to important matters. I think Hephaestus Sama just doesn't want you to develop the bad habit of expecting everything to be handed to you. Spending her money just to indulge your cravings isn't really a good thing for a goddess. She probably hopes you can learn to keep your desires in check. Hestia pouted. She understood perfectly well what Hephaestus was thinking. If she were in Belle's shoes, she definitely wouldn't act that way. After all, in front of Belle, she had to maintain her image as a dignified goddess. Chapter 72, Successfully Evading the Goddess of Beauty's Gaze. This kid is just ordinary. While preparing the food, Seer's eye color shifted slightly. Her gaze naturally landed on Belle, the newly minted adventurer. But it only lingered briefly before moving on. A brilliant soul is something no child of Genkai can hide. For gods who can see into the soul, such things are simply too obvious to miss. Yet when Seer's eyes locked onto Belle, the moment she saw that dull, dim soul, it was enough to make her lose all interest. Belle might be cute for a rookie adventurer, but Seer wasn't the type to steal Hestia's familia member just because he was adorable. She wasn't looking for cute. She wanted someone with a dazzling soul. Unfortunately, Hestia's child didn't have that brilliance. That alone doomed his future to mediocrity. With that realization, the faint hue in Seer's eyes faded back to normal. Belle, who had been on edge while observing his surroundings, finally felt a wave of relief wash over him. His sharpened senses had been warning him just moments ago, someone dangerous had been watching him. And in this tavern, only one person could give him that kind of feeling, the goddess behind it all, Freya. Looks like I made it through. Freya isn't paying attention to me. What a blessing in disguise. The cold sweat he'd broken into had somehow lifted his spirits. There was just no helping it. If Orario's biggest troublemaker wasn't targeting him, then that meant, as long as he stayed cautious, he could finally go about his life without unnecessary complications. No more divine meddling. No more worrying about being whisked away by Freya on a whim. Now that I think about it, I really was overthinking everything. My soul's not even the same one anymore. I'm a modern-day guy. How could I possibly have a brilliant soul? If anything, it's probably dark as tar. After confirming that the eerie, oppressive gaze was gone, Belle was certain Freya had lost interest in him. That alone resolved one of his biggest concerns. Maybe he wouldn't get the kind of growth he did in the original story, where Freya coddled him like a mother doting on her son, but it also meant he'd have far fewer problems. Going forward, Belle would have to tackle everything on his own. But that was fine. He'd known from the beginning that surviving in this world required keeping a low profile. He had no intention of standing out. As long as he stayed under the radar, there'd be a lot fewer problems to worry about. Keep your wealth hidden, stay unnoticed in the dungeon. If he stuck to those principles, leveling up in peace wouldn't be too hard. No matter how he looked at it, a quiet and peaceful life lay ahead. Belcolin, are you in a good mood? Hestia, who had been watching him all along, noticed the shift in his expression. Bel looked back at Goddess Sama, caught off guard. You noticed that too? Yeah, your expression didn't change, but the whole atmosphere around you shifted. Hestia didn't know what had caused the change, but she still pointed out what she sensed. Goddess Sama really is sharp. Maybe I'm just starting to get used to things. Hestia looked at Bel, puzzled. Her instincts told her he wasn't lying. But somehow, it felt like they were talking about entirely different things. Meow, the reserved guests have arrived. A cat girl in a classic maid outfit walked into the tavern. Through the shadows outside, a group of people could be seen waiting. As they began to enter one after another, the leader quickly became clear. A red-haired girl with narrow eyes and a cute side ponytail stood at the front, her striking figure hard to miss. Almost every adventurer present knew her by name. She was Loki, one of Orario's current twin kings. And since Loki was leading the group, it was obvious, these were the elites of the Loki familia. Findame, the golden-haired Palum youth. Riverial Joes Alf, noble of the Elven royal line. Gareth Landrock, the dwarven elder. The Amazonas sisters, Tioni and Tiona Hyrut. Betloga, the fierce werewolf. Lafia Vordis, the young elf mage. And of course, Orario's beloved sword princess, Ace Wallenstein. This lineup practically included the entire main force of the Loki familia, a perfect display of the power behind one of Orario's twin kings. Even Bel, seeing them for the first time, was taken aback by the overwhelming presence they carried. He could clearly sense the aura each of them radiated. It might have been subtle, but his sharp instincts picked up on the vast gap between them and himself. TCH. The sound snapped Bel back to reality. Beside him, Hestia clicked her tongue, her gaze locked tightly onto Loki. Oh ho! Maybe Hestia's intense stare had drawn attention. Loki, standing at the front, seemed to notice and strutted over with a smug grin. Yo, shorty! What brings you out for dinner today? No Fei-Fei tagging along? You sure you can even afford the bill without her? Loki's sharp words instantly got on Hestia's nerves. She smacked the table and shot to her feet. Smack! Stop looking at me like I'm still stuck in the past. I've got the best child now. As Hestia flared up, Loki finally noticed Bel sitting at the table. Oh, so this is your kid, huh? A real fresh recruit. Still, something felt a little off. Loki couldn't immediately figure out what it was. Judging by his aura, Hestia's child couldn't be more than level 1. Hey, newbie, must be tough supporting someone, huh? Hestia's infamous for being a handful. Loves wasting money on junk. Being her kid's gonna be rough. Her words were laced with mock sympathy, nearly setting Hestia off again. But Bel didn't react. Thank you for your concern, Loki-sama. But I believe I can manage Goddess Sama's living expenses just fine. And she's not nearly as bad as you make her sound. Chapter 73. No need to worry for now. Loki had to give him some credit. This newcomer actually had the guts to say something so pointed to her. Sure, she usually joked around and acted carefree, but that didn't mean she didn't care about anything. Not many people dared to talk to her like that, or even use that kind of tone. And yet, Loki actually appreciated kids like this. Especially ones who stepped up to defend their familiar god when they sensed someone was trying to slander them. Hestia immediately stood up, eyes sharp as she glared at Loki. Loki, don't you dare lay a finger on my Bel. Don't make me out to be so petty, shorty. Loki rolled her eyes at Hestia's outburst. Sure, she could be willful, but she wasn't petty enough to get angry at a brave kid just for standing up for their god. And besides, did she really look like the type of goddess who only knew how to throw tantrums? Loki ignored Hestia's vigilance. She genuinely liked this brave kid, and from the looks of it, he hadn't been an adventurer for long. But this kind of personality? Definitely her type. Newbie, I really like your personality. Standing up to defend your god when they're being mocked. While I wouldn't exactly recommend doing that, I do admire the courage. Since you're this brave, if you ever run into trouble, feel free to come find me. Bell only shook his head slightly. He could tell what was really going on between Loki and Goddess Sama. Loki-sama, I think the only reason you're going easy on me is because I'm part of Goddess Sama's familia. Was I really that obvious? Loki couldn't help but question if her acting had gotten that bad. For a kid who just became an adventurer to see through her that easily. She admitted, her appreciation for this newbie had a lot to do with that shorty. After all, she hadn't known that the shorty had already picked up a follower, and not just anyone, but someone with some real potential. As expected, Goddess Sama really has some pull among the gods. Bell could tell from Loki's reaction that his hunch had been right. The relationship between Loki and Goddess Sama was complicated. The kind where neither could stand the other. But they weren't mortal enemies. If anything, they were like frenemies, each waiting for the other to trip up. Bell couldn't help but reflect. Goddess Sama isn't without her advantages. She's got strong social skills and good relationships with many gods, and that alone is a huge asset for any familia. Massive. Though Goddess Sama started from nothing as an unaffiliated god, it wasn't like she was truly empty-handed. She had a circle of friends that were basically billionaires. Starting out might have been tough, but with a network like that, she was bound to gain ground fast. Unlike the shorty, you're actually pretty sharp, newbie. What did you just say? There was no mistaking the implication. She just called Hestia dumb. She exploded on the spot. Of course I mean you, you dumb dwarf. Ha! Like you're any smarter, you flat board. Flat board. That hit Loki hard. As a goddess, she was the rugged type. Even if she personally didn't care too much about it, comparisons were still comparisons. What she hated most was being compared to this damned shorty. No matter how indifferent she pretended to be, she still didn't want to lose to the shorty, especially not in the one area she, as a goddess, took pride in. But for some reason, she was the type who could see her toes just by looking down. And this shorty, who was way shorter than her, was the kind who could drink milk tea without even using her hands. The contrast between them was like the Earth and the Babel Tower, ridiculously far apart. Every time someone poked at that sore spot, Loki couldn't help but tear up a little. It wasn't that she didn't want to grow, but as a god she simply had no room to. That completely ruined her mood for the day. She grabbed the shorty's cheeks with crab-claw-like hands and pinched down with all her might. You damn midget, don't you know it's low to insult people by pointing out their flaws? Humph! You're the flat one. Flat as a board, yet you go after girls with curves. You're just jealous, aren't you? Jealous of my amazing figure. Each jab struck Loki right in the heart, bringing tears to the corners of her eyes. You are! Mama! This stupid midget is bullying me! Though she was the one being teased, tears streamed down Loki's face. She didn't feel like pinching the midget's cheeks anymore. Instead, she turned and dove into the arms of one of her familia members. Who's Mama? The royal elf she pounced on gave her a sharp glare. She was barely of age, still a young adult, and definitely not old enough to be called a mother. But for some reason, people in their familia kept calling her Mama. The whole thing had started thanks to their ridiculous deity. Riveria's gaze swept toward Hestia's familia, landing on the white-haired boy. Loki caught Riveria staring, changed her expression, and sat back down. What? You interested in the midget's kid too? Riveria shook her head slightly. She wasn't sure what it was, but just now, for a brief moment, she felt a strange sense of unease from that boy. His aura clearly marked him as a mere level 1 adventurer. Maybe it was just the after-effects of the expedition. Her nerves might still be frayed. Loki, did you sense anything? Loki's narrowed eyes deepened slightly. So you felt it too, huh? Even if it lasted only a moment, she definitely sensed something unusual, something oddly familiar, coming from that newbie. It was right there, on the tip of her tongue, but she couldn't quite say it aloud. That lucky midget. His first kid turns out to be someone like that. She didn't know exactly what that newbie was hiding, but she was sure he wasn't just some nobody. Maybe in a year or two, he'd make a name for himself. Still, lately it had been harder to read anything about Hestia's children. With that thought, Loki dropped the idea of watching him any further. Whatever he's hiding, it doesn't matter for now. Yeah. As long as he was still a rookie, there was no reason to be concerned just yet. Riveria quietly withdrew her attention as well. Chapter 74. Our Familia doesn't have a rank yet. Humph. Today was supposed to be her first date with Belle, something she'd worked hard to make happen. But just her luck, she ended up running into that person, and her rare good mood was completely ruined. With a fork in hand, she popped a piece of fish into her mouth. The delicious flavor of the fried fish helped Hestia temporarily forget her irritation. She glanced back at Loki, who was sitting with her own Familia at a nearby table. With a snort, she turned away. That damn woman had to show up and ruin my mood. Goddess-sama, weren't you having fun talking with Loki? Hardly. We've been at odds since forever. Belle's words made Hestia puff out her cheeks. Her rivalry with Loki dated back so long it was hard to even trace when it began. Of all the days to run into her. If she'd known Loki would be coming to this tavern too, Hestia definitely wouldn't have dragged Belle here today. Today's the day Loki's Familia returned from their expedition. They're probably celebrating. I heard Loki's Familia is the most proactive when it comes to exploring unknown floors. I'd bet this expedition brought back a lot. Well, probably. Hestia didn't really disagree. Given how aggressively Loki's Familia pursued the unknown layers of the dungeon, their return likely meant significant achievements. Even if I don't get along with Loki, her kids really are talented. Every single one of them is among the top adventurers in Orario. It was a fact Hestia couldn't deny. Being part of Orario's twin kings held real weight. If her children weren't that exceptional, Loki's Familia wouldn't always be pushing to conquer uncharted floors. Loki's Familia is so focused on floor conquest, yet Freya. Even though her Familia is stronger and more suited to dungeon exploration, she doesn't seem all that interested. The other member of Orario's twin kings also had plenty of outstanding adventurers. But Hestia hadn't heard much about Freya showing any particular drive to conquer new floors. Loki's group, on the other hand, would dive into the dungeon every few days, often without any prompts from the guild. They just launched expeditions on their own. I suppose that goddess has her own areas of interest. Belle said this casually, but he knew full well what the goddess of beauty was truly interested in. Compared to dungeon exploration, she was far more drawn to adventurers with brilliant souls. If it weren't for her specific preferences, I wouldn't have needed to be so cautious since arriving in Orario. But now that more areas of the city are open, I can at least go out and get to know Orario better. This date with his goddess unexpectedly served as a test to see if the goddess of beauty had taken notice of him. Now that Belle was sure she wasn't targeting him, he could finally move with a bit more freedom. He couldn't exactly roam around without any care, but at least it was better than before, when even taking a step outside felt risky. Belle also understood he couldn't stay cooped up at the Hestia Familia headquarters forever. Sometimes he had to go out and gather intel, especially floor intel. The guild didn't provide information beyond the 10th floor for free. Most of the deeper levels data required time and money to obtain. Only with accurate knowledge of each floor could he make the necessary preparations. Belle had always believed that thorough preparation could greatly reduce the risks he faced. Goddess-sama, will our Familia have to deal with that kind of problem too in the future? Probably not. Hestia shook her head, dismissing the idea outright. Conquering floors isn't something that can be done easily. Normally, it takes multiple familia members working together to ensure everyone's safety. The guild doesn't just throw familias into the dungeon to die. Usually, only familias evaluated at rank D are required to go on mandatory expeditions. For smaller familias, they won't even be considered for D rank. Most of their members need to be at least LV.2 before the guild even gives them a basic rating. Our familia doesn't even have a rank yet. The implication was obvious. Hestia Familia, with just one member, wasn't going to be considered rank D anytime soon. Not unless she recruited more people, and they had to be high-level adventurers at that. Unfortunately, Hestia didn't think she'd be able to attract many top-tier recruits. More importantly, she didn't want anyone else besides Belle. Right now, she and Belle living together was just right. Adding more members would only bring unnecessary complications. Besides, the most important point was that Belle didn't want companions in the first place. Hestia had heard before that Belle didn't trust other adventurers, so the chance of him teaming up with others was close to zero. Considering that, Hestia had long since given up on expanding her familia. This way, Belle would also have more room to grow at his own pace. And knowing Belle's exact status, Hestia wasn't worried about whether he could grow quickly, she was more concerned he'd grow too fast. Belle-kun, we don't need to worry about expeditions. Our familia will never be ranked that high. I understand. Thanks to Hestia's explanation, Belle now had a rough idea of how familia rankings worked. After all, he wasn't some lore expert. He'd only skimmed Danmachi in the past. And as a legitimate victim of gacha addiction, there were plenty of details he'd already forgotten. Belle also understood that his growth wasn't the issue. The real challenge was making it from LV.2 to LV.3 smoothly. The next great feat, the one to take him from LV.3 to LV.4, was clear in his mind. He had already decided that the floor boss on the 18th floor would be the one. That boss, set at LV.4, was the perfect opponent to accomplish the feat he needed to break past LV.3. But before that, he needed to do some more pulls. Ideally, he'd draw some critical craft essences, otherwise, soloing the floor boss would be next to impossible. And speaking of gacha, he really didn't want to think too hard about the state of his wallet. Being 200 million in debt was no joke. Especially when he had to both repay it and save money on the side. After all, both summoning and craft essence enhancement were ridiculously expensive. Chapter 75. Whoa! A golden orb. After their date, Belle and Hestia returned to their base. Today's outing had left Hestia in a great mood. It was their very first date, after all, and that made it special. Even though it had been interrupted and a little chaotic, the day still held a unique significance. Of course, Belle felt the same way. After such a good meal, I can't help feeling sleepy. Rubbing her eyes, Hestia struggled to fight off the drowsiness. Getting sleepy after eating, honestly, it was probably a sign of good health. Goddess-sama, if you're tired, you can go to bed early tonight. Hestia had been thinking the same, though a small part of her couldn't help feeling a little excited inside. Belle-kun, today. Goddess-sama, before I sleep, I want to get some training in. Seeing Belle suddenly turn serious, the words Hestia was about to say got stuck in her throat. After seeing the presence of Loki Familia today, it made me realize just how far I am from those top-level adventurers. For Belle, today had been a trial. Confronted with a level of strength that felt completely out of reach, he wasn't discouraged. Instead, the encounter awakened a strong sense of inadequacy. One that only pushed him to improve. Belle knew he still had the chance, and more importantly, the drive to keep going. That meant he couldn't afford to retreat now. He didn't have the option to back down. If he faltered here, how could he face Goddess-sama? How could he stay true to his goal of reaching level 10? So in this moment, Belle chose to step forward, to move beyond his limits, and fully embrace his hunger for strength. I know I can't get stronger overnight, but I still want to give myself as much training time as I can. In that case, Belkun, promise me you won't go into the dungeon tonight. She wanted to object outright. Nighttime was meant for rest, and he should be home recovering. But looking into Belle's clear, unwavering eyes, she found herself unable to say no. All she could do was steel herself and speak the words she didn't really believe. Don't worry, I know how dangerous the dungeon is at night. I'll just stay up here and do some training. After reporting his plan to Goddess-sama, Belle headed out to the open space outside the church. Since the area was far from the main street, the surrounding sounds were faint, and Belle didn't sense anyone watching him. Let's begin the gacha. Just like before, he committed a full 100,000 valis up front. Ding! You have 2 special gacha attempts remaining. Belle paused, then quickly understood why the Type Moon system issued that reminder. Last time, I only managed to get 5 low-star craft essences at most, even the 3-star ones. Looks like the upper limit for low-star craft essences is 5 per pull. At least, that's how it seemed based on current results. Only 2 limited gacha pulls left, and I've already locked in the final 2 low-star craft essences. Guess the system doesn't want me abusing its draw mechanics. Still, Belle knew he wasn't losing out here. These limited-time gacha draws had a guarantee system. Each 10 pull guaranteed at least 1 3-star craft essence. That meant he couldn't pull the last 2 low stars in a single roll. It had to be 2 pulls minimum. In other words, with the 5-card limit on low stars, these last 2 10 pulls would likely net him at least 10 3-star craft essences. That was about equal to everything he'd pulled across 10 previous 10 pulls. Gacha. The Type Moon system kicked into action, but this time, instead of displaying results directly, a spirit summoning circle appeared. Belle instinctively reached out, but his hand passed right through it. Is it just a visual projection? Maybe it's special because these are the last 2 discount gacha draws. He continued watching the summoning circle spin rapidly, light orbs flying across it as craft essences began to appear before his eyes. 2-star craft essences. Deception times 5, conformity times 4. 3-star craft essence, from Uruk times 1. Belle wasn't all that surprised by the outcome. The final 2 types of 2-star craft essences had appeared. What caught his eye, though, was the unexpected 3-star pull. From Uruk. Still, what truly drew Belle's attention was its description. From Uruk, restores 1% of MP per minute. As a 3-star effect in-game, this would be considered mediocre. After all, 1% was a painfully slow rate in a turn-based system. But in real life, it made a world of difference. Even 1% regeneration per minute significantly improved magical endurance. That's just the base effect. Max limit break should raise it by another 1%. 2% MP recovery per minute definitely isn't bad. In FGO, activating a noble phantasm required NP, and characters started each battle with 0 NP unless supplemented by craft essences. Because of the turn-based system, 1% NP per turn felt almost useless. But in the real world, that turned into passive MP recovery, no activation required, constantly regenerating. Continue. Belle took a deep breath and focused on the summoning circle before him. This next draw would be his last before reaching LV.2. Whatever he pulled now would determine how much stronger he could become. The ring of light around the circle began to spin. Belle watched quietly as one craft essence after another emerged from the summoning circle. The first one's the final. Conformity. Huh! They're really making sure I pull all the low stars before giving me the guaranteed 3 stars. 3-star craft essences began appearing one after another. Belle didn't pay much attention to which ones they were. At this point, any 3-star craft essence was welcome. He'd go over the details later. Ding! A sharp chime suddenly rang in his ears, snapping his eyes wide open as he looked at the summoning circle. What he saw stunned him. The orbs circling the platform had turned gold. No way. Is this actually happening? Anyone who'd ever played FGO knew what golden orbs meant. It signaled the summoning of a heroic spirit. And the appearance of that golden glow meant one thing: he had pulled a rare 4-star or even 5-star heroic spirit. Chapter 76: Shock and Delight. I'm going! The golden light burst out so suddenly that Bell was completely caught off guard. He quickly drew in a sharp breath and stared intently at the summoning base in front of him. No matter what rank the heroic spirit was, this draw meant everything to him right now. The glowing sphere slowly stopped spinning, and a card with a figure holding a wand and wearing a cloak appeared before his eyes. It wasn't a golden card, so it wasn't a 4-star or 5-star heroic spirit. But that was to be expected. Even with the current promotional rates, the guaranteed minimum was only 3 stars. The image on the card gradually became clearer. Caster CU. It's Caster CU. Ku Chulin in the caster class, affectionately known as Caster CU. Just like his Lancer counterpart, though he wielded a staff, he was still someone who loved playing with spears. Known as Caster Hound, he was quite formidable and used chantless rune magecraft. Compared to other heroic spirits, his raw stats were quite plain, but in FGO, power isn't just about numbers. Skills and synergy mattered just as much. And there was no doubt, Caster CU was among the stronger heroic spirits. His chantless rune magecraft made him no weaker than his Lancer version. System: how do heroic spirits work? Can they be summoned? Or do I just gain their power? Warning: different world detected. Heroic spirit summoning not permitted. Damn it! That answer jolted Bell back to his senses. He could understand it though. If different worlds allowed such things freely, everything would be in chaos. Additionally, the summoned spirit is incomplete. The world rejects external entities. Only one element from the spirit origin may be retained. A bucket of cold water. That completely sobered him up. There really was no shortcut to success in this world. He had finally drawn Caster CU, only to get an incomplete spirit origin. This Type Moon system feels kind of underwhelming. Bell couldn't help but complain. Drawing craft essences was no big deal, but summoning heroic spirits came with way too many issues. Warning: please make your choice quickly. The incomplete spirit origin is collapsing. Fuck. Bell swore hard in his mind, then immediately made his choice. Keep rune magecraft. Primordial rune successfully extracted. Cost to extract primordial rune from spirit origin, 10 million Valis. Hashtag. Not only did I draw a broken heroic spirit, I can only keep one of its abilities, and now I have to pay 10 million Valis just to extract it. Isn't this a scam? Right now, Bell felt like he'd been completely screwed by this damn system. It felt like walking into a trap, and in the end, he had to foot the bill himself. Otherwise, he'd just have to watch the spirit origins slowly fade away. But what choice did he have now? Sunk cost. What else can I do but pay up? He could practically hear a heartbreaking crack echoing in his ears. The 24.1 million Valis he had saved from selling those goblin daggers was instantly cut in half. He had originally planned to use 20 million of that to repay his debt. Now, it was down to 14.1 million Valis. After setting aside 4.1 million Valis for daily expenses, he only had 10 million left, just enough to cover the debt. Fusion with primordial runes. The voice in his ear made Bell close his eyes to receive the power. But this time, unlike the discomfort he had felt when accepting 1-star or 2-star craft essences, Bell experienced no resistance at all. He quickly understood why. It's not a skill or magic, it's knowledge. Primordial runes, it's not even rune magecraft. Rune magecraft refers not to the original runes, but to the altered versions that emerged later, ones that had already lost their divine essence. Yet this power extracted from Caster CU's spirit origin was the true primordial runes. Normally, it would only evolve into primordial runes after Caster CU's spirit origin had been fully restored. But now, the power removed from Caster CU's spirit origin was already primordial runes. In that case, the money spent wasn't such a huge loss. The power of primordial runes is far greater than that of rune magecraft. At the very least, I haven't lost out on this deal. Bell took a deep breath to steady his wildly fluctuating emotions, trying to calmly face the situation. So his master really passed the primordial runes to Caster Siu just to have him kill her. Otherwise, there's no way the master would have made such a choice. No wonder Caster Siu exists. It probably only became possible because of the primordial runes. The only downside is that primordial runes isn't a skill or a spell, but just knowledge. Honestly, spending 10 million Valis on the primordial runes felt like a steal to Bell. Money can always be earned again, but if he missed the chance to get the primordial runes, there would be no second opportunity. Runes have powerful applications in offense, defense, healing, and support. Once mastered and used proficiently, primordial runes becomes an incredibly versatile force. Perfect. I need to keep Lightning Command hidden for now. Runes can serve as a temporary substitute magic. Bell thought about his imbalanced stats. To become a well-rounded fighter, he needed to strengthen his weaker attributes. Strength and endurance were next on his list. Attributes typically aligned closely with the combat style one pursued. The type of battle one engaged in would influence which stats grew. If he wanted to raise both strength and endurance, then relying on Lightning Command for quick battles would be counterproductive. Rune magecraft also takes time to understand and master. Good thing I've still got time. For Bell, rushing to raise his level at the cost of long-term potential would be putting the cart before the horse. So this is the heroic spirit, huh? I really can't expect too much from him. The spirit origin couldn't be fully summoned, and even weapons or noble phantasms weren't allowed. Outside items were simply forbidden. That's just how this world worked. Bell stopped overthinking it. Right now, the most important thing was to train in using runes. Chapter 77, An All-Nighter for Study. A pale blue rune character appeared in front of Bell. It was the very first rune he had ever inscribed. It's so difficult to write these runes using mana as ink. After finishing the first character, Bell let out a small sigh of relief, but he was surprised by just how hard it was to write runic letters. Primordial runes aren't some modern creation. There are only 18 characters, but the combinations of those 18 runes can encompass all things. This portion of knowledge had been extracted from Casterhound's understanding of the primordial runes. The information was so vast and intricate that it could have turned Bell into an idiot just trying to comprehend it. If not for the Type Moon system helping him absorb that immense volume of knowledge, there was no way he could have learned it on his own. Of course, even with that assistance, all Bell had was enough knowledge to start using the runic letters. To truly master all 18 primordial runes would still take time and practice. At the very least, he needed to inscribe all 18 runes first before he could begin learning the more advanced applications. At the same time, Bell began to have doubts about Casterhound's identity. Is the person who wields this kind of power really that Casterhound who supposedly doesn't like using rune magecraft? Wasn't it said that runic letters could only be used individually? Then why does the knowledge I've received include all kinds of combination functions for them? Bell fully acknowledged Ku Chulin as a great hero. A Casterhound who fought with a spear certainly deserved that title. His strength and personality were both top-tier. But Bell couldn't bring himself to believe that a hero like Ku Chulin, who wielded a spear, could also master the runes to such an extent, even using them in multiples. In his Lancer form, he should have only known standard rune magecraft, so how did that shift into mastering primordial runes as a caster? If you insisted that he had learned them from Scathack, maybe that could be justified. But would someone who barely used rune magecraft secretly master it to such a high level? To put it bluntly, wasn't that a bit much for even Scathack? There's only one real possibility: possession. Someone must have taken on Casterhound's identity at the first singularity, making others think he was just Ku Chulin, while hiding who he truly was. As that thought formed, Bell felt like he'd hit upon the truth. If Caster Hound wasn't the real Cuchulainn, then it made perfect sense why the primordial rune knowledge he provided was so detailed, profound, complex, and versatile. In the Type Moon worldview, there really are heroic spirits who would pull something like this. But those are heroic spirits that possess ordinary people. A regular heroic spirit shouldn't be able to possess another heroic spirit. Only a god could pull that off. Descend from the heavens? Or maybe possession through runic letters? Bell couldn't even imagine which god would be capable of such a feat. As for tracing the route through the current primordial runes, he had to admit he didn't know much about that subject. I don't know which god might be possessing Caster Hound, but getting the primordial runes out of it was a real stroke of luck. Otherwise, even if you could extract primordial runes from a spirit origin, I imagine only Scathach or the Lost Belt Scotty could pull that off. But those were 5-star heroic spirits. In the Type Moon system, Bell already considered himself lucky just to draw a 3-star heroic spirit. He wouldn't even dare to dream of a 5-star. Without fate, pulling a 5-star heroic spirit was impossible. Rather than daydreaming, he figured it made more sense to earn more money and keep drawing craft essences. It's good to clarify the identity of Caster Hound, but the matter of the primordial runes still has to take top priority. In truth, when it came to Caster Hound, the first person Bell thought of was the beauty goddess Freya, who had pulled a similar move. He really was getting a bit of PTSD from all this. Bell shook his head to clear it of those messy thoughts and returned to inscribing more runic letters. These 18 runes would be the part he could show publicly, and that way, he could temporarily conceal the use of his lightning command magic. Continue writing. Thanks to the golden orb, Bell's mental state was unusually good at the moment. Meditation. Concentration. Those were the 2 craft essences he had received last time. Maybe they didn't seem all that useful in game, but in the real world, their impact was significant. Meditation allowed him to rest while remaining aware of his surroundings. Concentration helped him focus, enhancing his senses during battle, and outside combat, it helped keep his mind sharp, strengthening his mental state overall. Entering that mindset while training allowed him to learn more efficiently. Sure, it consumed more energy. But as long as he wasn't doing it in the dungeon, the cost didn't matter. Very good. Let's begin. Bell quickly moved on to writing the second rune. The night passed. Bell had spent the entire night up on the open space above the church, studying and inscribing runic letters with unwavering focus, right up until sunrise. His concentration had held the entire time. By the end, Bell's eyes had gone panda-colored, bloodshot and tired, but his mood was still riding high. Good. All done in one night. 18 runic letters. In just a single night, Bell had managed to complete the preliminary study of the runes. He had succeeded in mastering their basic forms. Taking a deep breath, his fingers quickly traced character after character in the air. The speed wasn't great, nearly 20 seconds to complete all 18 runes, but for a beginner that was already impressive. If he kept studying, there'd come a time when he wouldn't need to use his fingers at all. He'd be able to draw the runes using nothing but fluctuations of mana. But that wasn't something achievable in a single night. Drawing runes with mana fluctuations was far more difficult than doing it with fingers. Still, for now, Bell could finally take a break. But before that, Bell's sore fingers moved through the air, drawing 3 runic letters. The symbols glowed faintly blue, slowly merging into his body. It was a form of spiritual healing, accelerating his mental recovery. His exhausted mind gradually felt replenished. His panda eyes visibly lightened. In less than a minute, the emergency healing had done its work. Phew! Runes really are something else. That effect is amazing. Chapter 78 Money Can Solve the Problem. It was noon when Bell finally woke up. The basement was pitch black, but Bell's eyes had long since adjusted to the darkness. To him, it made no difference whether it was light or dark. The magic lamp isn't on. He shook his head slightly, then casually slid his fingers through the air. The entire basement instantly lit up. Runic letters really are more versatile than I expected. When Bell had received this knowledge yesterday, he'd already realized just how powerful the primordial runes were, almost to the point of omnipotence. If something couldn't be done, it wasn't because the runic letters weren't capable, but because the user lacked the skill. Bell didn't get up right away. Instead, he checked his mental state. Much better than I expected. Using runic letters to enter deep sleep really does help recover mental and physical energy faster. The basement clock showed it was exactly 10 in the morning. He'd gone to sleep around 8, which meant it had only been 2 hours, yet he'd fully recovered from the fatigue of an all-nighter. Of course, that likely had a lot to do with how he had used runic letters to heal his exhausted spirit. Otherwise, even deep sleep induced by rune wouldn't have restored him this quickly. Focusing intensely for an entire night really did a number on my mind. The stress had pushed his spirit to the brink of collapse after he finished his studies that morning. Thankfully, he had used rune to restore his mental state. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have woken up for another 2 or 3 days. He sat up in bed, sensing the flow of mana in his body. Runic letters don't use that much mana. It's totally manageable. Then Bell froze. Right, I got so excited seeing that 3-star heroic spirit yesterday, I completely forgot to test whether the craft essence I absorbed could still be enhanced afterward. I didn't even look at the rest of the craft essences. I got way too carried away. He rubbed his temples in frustration. Sometimes, he really was careless. This was something he should have paid close attention to, yet on such a crucial point, he'd let it slip. Fortunately, the craft essences were safely stored. Even if the ones he absorbed early couldn't be strengthened further, Bell wouldn't have chosen to absorb them so soon if he hadn't been confident. Absorbing them after max limit break was definitely better than before. Even when his excitement clouded his judgment, Bell still made sure to stay cautious about things like this. But there's really no rush when it comes to 3-star craft essences. Right now, Bell wasn't particularly concerned about those. Just one runic letter was enough to steadily carry him from LV1 to LV2. Whether or not the other craft essences could self-enhance wasn't a major concern. After all, whether they'd be useful at all depended on whether the absorbed craft essences could actually be strengthened. Let's start by testing whether a craft essence can be enhanced again after being absorbed. Bell projected his mind into the Type Moon system and immediately focused on the 2-star craft essence. Deception. This craft essence increased the success rate of inflicting debuffs. Even against max-level development abilities like abnormal resistance, it could still raise the success chance, though the base probability was a bit low. Absorbed 2-star craft essence, Deception. A 2-star craft essence appeared in front of Bell and slowly dissolved into points of light, merging into his body. Unlike last time when he absorbed 18 craft essences at once, absorbing just one 2-star craft essence barely affected his body. Still, after the absorption, Bell clearly felt a slight soreness in his eyes. After a short while, as the soreness faded, he felt his eyes evolve once more. He could now see even tinier lifeforms. Looks like different types of craft essences strengthen different parts of my body in varying ways. Alright, next is enhancement. Enhanced 2-star craft essence, Deception. Requires 400,000 Valis. The prompt made Bell pause briefly, then his expression changed. So even a pre-absorbed, non-limit broken craft essence can still be enhanced. But it has to be done immediately. The cost is 3 times higher than directly enhancing 5 of them at once. So as long as you've got money, anything's possible, huh? Having once again experienced how stingy the Type Moon system could be, Bell got the confirmation he needed. But this also made one thing clear to him. Unless it was a crucial craft essence, he'd always aimed to pull 5 copies, enhance them to max limit break, and only then absorb them. He could stomach the triple cost for a 2-star, but what about a 3-star? 4-star? 5-star? That kind of price hike would bleed him dry. No matter how rich he was, even Bell couldn't afford to waste money like that. Besides, this was only the beginning. Bell couldn't repeat the same cash farming methods from before, and right now, every coin mattered. He had no choice but to avoid tripling his expenses just to enhance a craft essence. Still, at least I now know that even in an emergency, I can enhance and use a craft essence right away. That realization gave Bell both a headache and a sense of relief. A headache because he still had to solve his money issues. Relief because he wouldn't have to worry about wasting valuable craft essences. Enhanced 2-star craft essences. Requires 500,000 valis. Confirm. 9 craft essences appeared simultaneously. 4 turned into light and merged into Bell's body. The remaining 5 first fused together through enhancement, then turned into light and entered his body as well. With that, all his low-star craft essences had been both enhanced and absorbed. He'd done everything he could for now. To keep improving, drawing more cards wouldn't be enough. From here on, he'd need to level up and build up solid experience. It was a time and energy-consuming process, but at his current pace, it felt like riding a rocket. And for now, no gods were paying attention to a small fry like him. Well, except for that trickster Hermes. That guy was the most unpredictable, so Bell couldn't afford to slow down. If he ever caught Hermes' attention, he'd be in for 10 times the trouble. Chapter 79, Hydra Dagger Max Limit Break. After completing his basic training, Bell didn't rush into the dungeon. Caution was necessary. Being too impulsive or overly excited might make him lose control, just like when he drew that heroic spirit last night. Once he had calmed himself, Bell started reviewing the 3-star craft essences he had drawn yesterday. 3-star craft essences, Hydra Dagger times 4, Igmilenia's Pedigree times 1, all 3 forms times 1, Kuji Kanasada times 1, from Uruk times 1. None of them were particularly rare. In fact, aside from Divine Construct, most 3-star craft essences weren't all that uncommon. Still, with 4 Hydra Daggers already in hand, he now had enough to perform a max limit break. Bell didn't think twice. If he had 5 copies, then it was time to limit break. He was also curious to see how weapon-type craft essences would change after a full enhancement. Enhanced 3-star craft essence, Hydra Dagger. Requires 1 million valis. Confirm. After enduring the pain of previous spending, Bell was noticeably calmer when facing this cost. It wasn't like the money was going elsewhere, it was being used to strengthen himself, so it was worth it. And through spending this 1 million valis, Bell realized that materialized items didn't require additional enhancement costs. From now on, directly materializing items would be the smarter choice. He took out the Hydra Dagger from his 4-dimensional space. The dagger had changed significantly. The previously flashy, dual-edged design had become a simple, deep purple blade with no barbs, plain and unadorned. But under the sunlight, a faint purple aura shimmered along the blade's edge. The visual effect from the enhancement made Bell pause in awe. At the same time, a description appeared above the dagger. Hydra Dagger, a dagger imbued with the toxic blood of Hydra, whose venom not even the gods can withstand. Note, grants the special properties Blood of Hydra and Indestructible. So, weapons could gain traits after being maxed out. Not only had its form changed, its very nature had been transformed. Now this poison blade might actually come in handy. Bell hadn't liked the flashy appearance of the original Hydra Dagger. If mishandled, it could have backfired and caused him problems. But now the blade was reshaped into a regular dagger, and with the addition of the Indestructible trait, its value had skyrocketed. When facing tough opponents, poisoning them might be a pretty good tactic. And Bell poured some water onto the Hydra Dagger. The droplets instantly reacted with the purple aura surrounding the blade, turning a faint shade of purple, just like the Hydra's venomous blood. Bell looked down at the Hydra Dagger in his hand, satisfied. It's like I just paid to get a permanent supply of Hydra's blood. I don't know exactly how lethal the poison is after it's transferred through the blade, But even if it can't kill outright, it'll definitely make them suffer. Poison would be essential in the future. Hydra's blood had the power to slay even gods. That alone showed just how terrifying it truly was. However, Bell could also tell, the blade itself had lost some of its sharpness. This knife can catch opponents without tough skin off guard. But if I'm up against someone whose physical toughness can resist a blade, I'll need to pair it with another weapon. Even so, Bell didn't deny the value of the max limit broken Hydra dagger. This round of gotcha really paid off. And it directly influences my combat style. Previously, without any abilities, Bell had naturally chosen the most efficient fighting method available. That's also why he acquired the Lightning Command magic. But now, Bell aimed to develop himself more comprehensively. While efficient combat couldn't be abandoned, he needed to cover the two areas he had been lacking in. Simply put, Bell's new development goal was direct confrontation. By fighting head-on, he would raise his strength and endurance stats, working toward becoming a well-rounded, Pentagon-style warrior. Next up, keep learning to inscribe runic letters. Now it's time to start learning advanced techniques for drawing runic letters. Runes were a form of magic that required no chanting, and their effectiveness depended on how fast they were drawn. Which meant, mastering instant rune inscription was the most critical skill Bell needed right now. But I can't afford to keep dragging things out. I still need to keep progressing through the dungeon, and I've got to continue rune training too. My next priority is to max out my attributes grades in the shortest time possible, then level up. Leveling up was something every adventurer looked forward to. It signified a leap in power. For Bell, it meant even more. Once he leveled up, the gotcha restrictions in the Type Moon system would be lifted. 4-star and 5-star craft essences would become possible pulls, and 3 stars would become standard. Naturally, once he reached LV.2, new areas of the dungeon would open up. He could even try challenging the middle floors. This was usually a long grind for normal adventurers, but not for Bell. At most, it'd take 1 or 2 months. Maybe less than a month if things went well. Still, his formal status as a LV.1 wouldn't change. And because of that LV.1 title, Bell would have to handle most future activities solo. Entering the middle floors would require much more preparation, otherwise, even 10 seasoned adventurers could get wiped out in a careless moment. Alright, back to work. Tomorrow's a live combat day in the dungeon. I don't have the luxury to keep spending all my time just learning runes. This afternoon was Bell's last stretch of free time to study runes. Starting tomorrow, he'd return to the dungeon for real combat. And he would need to apply runes in battle to raise his attributes grades. After all, strength and endurance were next on the list for intensive growth, and runic magic played a big part in enhancing attributes during training. Without delay, Bell focused all his mental energy on practicing instant rune inscription. As for rune combinations, that wasn't a priority. He could get familiar with those gradually through actual combat. There was no need to waste too much time on them now. Chapter 80. You can head back this afternoon, Hestia. Wow, there are so many people here this morning. During her lunch break, Hestia, who had been working non-stop at Hephaestus's shop, finally had a moment to relax. Around this time, adventurers usually start coming in to maintain their weapons. That's also when the shop gets the busiest. Geez, but maintenance isn't the same as buying weapons. Why is it so crowded this early? You idiot. Do you think weapon maintenance can be done right away? I only have so many children in my familia, and not all of them can handle maintenance work. Blacksmiths and adventurers go hand in hand. Blacksmiths forge and maintain weapons, while adventurers use them to make a name for themselves in the dungeon. However, not every blacksmith is willing to take on just any client. There are some level 3 and level 4 adventurers in Hephaestus's familia, but they generally don't take random orders. Only the level 2 blacksmiths who need experience are less picky. Even so, high-level blacksmiths in Hephaestus's familia are limited, so reservations are required in advance. The higher the level of the blacksmith, the more reservations they tend to have. Take Tsubaki Kalbrand for example, the captain of Hephaestus's familia. As a level 5 blacksmith, she undoubtedly has the most requests. But she usually only handles orders from the major familia. It's not about arrogance. It's just that she's only one person. A single blacksmith simply can't take on too much work. There's only so much one person can do. That's why this period always ends up being incredibly busy at Hephaestus's shop, with an overwhelming number of orders for forging and maintenance. And that's exactly why Hestia had been swamped all morning. This was her responsibility. Hephaestus looked over at Hestia, who seemed a little gloomy, and immediately guessed the reason. "You're not in a great mood today. Did something happen to your child?" "Of course not." Hestia shot her a glare. Hephaestus never missed a chance to make a snide comment. "Bel is perfectly healthy. It's just, he's been throwing himself into training lately. He didn't even sleep at all last night. I'm worried that if this keeps up, it's going to seriously affect his health." "Oh?" Hephaestus raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "That kid always seemed calm and cautious, very aware of how dangerous Oreo can be. For someone like that to suddenly start chasing power, his goal must be enormous." Back when they first met, Hephaestus had already noticed that Bel wasn't one to care about honor or power. So what had lit this fire inside a boy who once had so little ambition? In the end, it all came down to setting a goal so lofty that only through sheer effort could he hope to reach it. Once that happened, changing his lifestyle was only natural. And looking at this hopeless idiot, Hephaestus didn't need an explanation to figure out that Bel was doing it all for Hestia, that fool. The goal really is a bit too grand. Even Hestia struggled to describe just how far Bel was aiming. After all, his goal was level 10, a height no adventurer in Oreo had ever reached. "So even you think it's a big deal, huh?" Hephaestus couldn't even begin to picture how huge that goal was. She already knew something special had started to grow between Hestia and Bel, just like so many other goddesses who returned to Tenkai. But even her imagination wasn't wild enough to guess what his goal really was. "Hestia, whatever his goal is, you need to talk some sense into him. A goal is something you reach step by step. If he can't take care of his own health, how is he supposed to take care of you?" Hestia, sitting on a stool with her chin resting in her hands, swung her slippered feet lazily. She pouted. She wasn't blind to the fact that Bel pushing himself like this wasn't good for his body. But she also understood his desire to keep getting stronger. After all, the goal he set from the beginning was far too ambitious. Just one look, and Hephaestus could see the uncertainty and helplessness on Hestia's face. It was clear this idiot had no idea how to bring it up. "Hestia, just talk it through properly with Bel. The body is the foundation for progress. If that foundation crumbles, there's no point in continuing forward." After saying that, Hephaestus gave a dismissive wave. "That's it for your work today. You can head home." "Huh! But isn't there still the afternoon shift? You said this morning that it would be even tougher. I'm giving you a half-day off today, for that kid's sake." "Yay! Hephaestus, you're the best!" Overjoyed, Hestia jumped up from her seat. Since she was being let off early, there was no need to hold back. Bel had just gone to bed when she left earlier, and now she was genuinely worried that staying up all night might have affected his health. Without even bothering to change out of her work clothes, Hestia pushed open the door and rushed out. "I'll wear my work clothes back tomorrow." Watching her dash out, Hephaestus shook her head slightly. Just what kind of goal is that quiet child chasing so desperately? Bel was an unusual kid, much like the rare skills and magic he possessed. He was someone with a strong sense of purpose. Normally, if he believed something could be achieved with steady effort, he wouldn't be in such a rush to improve himself. But now, that calm child had lost his composure. "Seems like he's chasing more than one goal. And Hestia, she's not even trying to stop him. If he goes too far, he might just burn himself out. But she's changed too. Hephaestus had known other goddesses who lost their composure after a fateful encounter. Even Hestia, who she'd thought would never change, had started to shift. Maybe Genkai really did change the gods more than they realized. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated in Danmachi World with a System. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.